Welcome to Dare to be Healthy. This is your host Alia Almoayed, broadcasting from the tiny little island of Bahrain. Today's episode is called Healthy Parenting Gossip. And what I'm going to do today is, every time somebody asks me how do I do the healthy parenting thing, and I always say, I don't know, I'm still making so many mistakes. And recently my friend Jelaine, who you can see here with me on the screen, she was in Bahrain visiting. And with a background in psychology, I actually caught Jelaine watching me a few times with my kids. And I could see she had a lot of questions, and we wanted to have this conversation while she was here, but we never did. So we thought, why not just have the conversation? She's with me on Skype now, and I'm in Bahrain, and it's 9:30 p.m. now, and it's 10:30 a.m. in Arizona. So this is very exciting, and the internet is making the world a lot smaller. But Jelaine, it's so nice to have you with me on the call. It's always a pleasure. And I wanted to just have this conversation that we never had. I know you had a lot of questions about parenting. You are a mother yourself, and I always find it challenging and exciting at the same time. But I'm curious to know how you feel about the whole parenting process.
Well, before I even say that, may I say one thing? What really struck our wanting to have this conversation, I think, is that we were having lunch, I think, one day at your house, and it was not just a beautiful lunch. I mean, every dish just looked exquisite and vegetarian. But your kids, they just dived right in, and they all wanted to eat everything. And I think I just sat there looking completely incredulous, because to see all ages. I mean, it's one thing for young kids, like your youngest, to maybe eat an avocado or a tomato, but it seems like once they hit 5, 6, 7, all of a sudden, no, mommy, I can't eat that. That tastes terrible. Don't let me do that. And your kids just kept asking for more. And I just thought, wow. So I just wanted to start with that, because that was just a wow moment. I haven't seen kids so eager. I've seen kids who eat their vegetables, but don't actually ask for vegetables. And there's a difference. So how did you do that?
Well, I think maybe you came on a very good day, first of all. We don't always have that. But, I have 3 kids, and it's funny, even within the vegetable range, they have their preferences. And you have to respect the individuality there. You have to accept that some things they will like and some things they won't. But I think the main thing is just habit. It says children need to see a food at least 20 times before they'll even try it, and then a lot more than that until it becomes habit, until it becomes part of their life. So they've seen this food so often. Maybe if we go to another country and see what they eat, we might need more time, even if it's within the same range of vegetables or rice or whatever. But even if it's cooked differently, they might need a few times until they adjust to that, But I think basically it's just repeatedly having that same food, and also leading by example. I think when they see you eating it and they see you making all kinds of yummy sounds when you eat it, then it becomes a lot more likely that they'll eat it. I noticed that my youngest, who's 3 now, picks up a lot on his siblings' reactions to the food. So if one of the older ones makes a face at a certain food, I mean, kids are like monkeys. They're always just copying things. So I noticed that he does that as well. So I would imagine that when my kids were very young, when the older ones were much younger, they probably were watching our body language as well in reaction to these foods. And it does make a difference.
Okay, well, let me just ask this.
Okay.
So my son was younger, and he's now 7. He would eat, he had a much greater palate for what he'd be willing to eat. Now it's about texture. So he'll say something, and all of a sudden the texture's wrong. It's too grainy. It's like broccoli, it's the texture. He doesn't mind the taste.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden this texture pieces come in. So have you found that to be true with your kids at all? Or, because I do think that kids sometimes change. And so how do you deal with all of a sudden when their senses start sensing things differently?
I think before I answer that, I hear a buzz coming from your, when you talk. Do you have like a lawnmower or something in your garden?
No. No. It's very quiet where I am.
Really? I don't know if it's in my computer. Well, okay, let's continue anyway, and then we'll see how that sounds. I think to answer your question, children go through phases. And at about age 6 or 7 is when they develop this I have my own opinion and I have my own personality and I'm discovering things. And at the risk of saying let them do whatever they want at that age, you still have to be slightly strict, but you have to maybe question it a bit more and say, what is it about that food that you don't like? For example, I have a rule in the house where you can't say you don't like it unless you've tried it. And you can't say, I had it 2 months ago and I didn't like it. You have to try it at the table there and then, at least have one bite. And then you're allowed to say, I don't like it, or I don't feel like having it today. And many parents don't accept that answer as normally I'd like it, I don't feel like having it today. Because this is something that we would do even as adults, you know? So you have to allow him that individuality at least. But then question it a bit. If it's gone further than a lot longer than you would like, question it a bit and say, what is it about the texture of so and so that you don't like? Is it the hairiness? Does it leave a taste in your mouth? What is it about it? And experiment with that, because once he learns how to verbalize that feeling, then he will know how to handle that in the future, even when he's on his own and trying to eat healthy. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's interesting because I think before I went to Bahrain, I have been very lax with my son. So I gave him a lot, and I would use different juices. You know, I'd find like the green naked juices that had lots of green vegetables, and he was always willing to drink his veggies. Yeah. And I have been doing that now, is that every night he has to at least have 1 or 2 bites of something. Okay. Whatever it is. And so, and it's true about the exposure, because he's starting to say, instead of I hate this, to, well, it's just not very good. Yeah, yeah. But that's better. I hate this. Yeah, you know? Of course. And, well, it doesn't taste that bad. Yeah. You know. Yeah. So he's willing to say, yes, I like it yet. We haven't achieved that one. Yeah. But I'm not having as much resistance. I mean, and it's only 1 or 2 bites. So I do see your point there. Well, you know, something very interesting as well. Children who have very fussy children. I don't know about Ethan, but children who are very fussy, and a lot of parents complain about this, where the child has just a small selection of foods that they're willing to eat. So they'll eat chicken, they'll eat rice, they'll eat bananas and yogurt, for example. And if you notice that kids who are very fussy, they tend to have a monotone diet. So everything has the same color. It's all a whitish, beigeish kind of family of colors. And if your child does that, then you might want to look into a possible food allergy or a food intolerance that they might have, because that usually influences food habits as well. For example, when children have an intolerance to dairy products, for example, a lot of kids don't tolerate dairy products very well, but we don't notice because it's not an allergy per se. It's a very subtle intolerance that the body adjusts to. And what it does is it coats the taste buds, and over time the children stop tasting the food even, so they don't notice that it tastes good or that it tastes different. So they end up going for the foods that they're familiar with, that they can remember the taste of almost. So for a lot of children, the diet has gone so bland and so monotonous that the mothers have given up completely. And then they end up giving them more milk because they think they're undernourished because the diet is so limited. And it's a vicious cycle. And for these mothers, I think cutting out the dairy products is a huge step, because it completely defogs the brain, it defogs the taste buds, and it opens up a whole new range of tastes for that child. And parents are always afraid to try that, but it's worth a try. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, it's and I'm trying to think to myself, okay, so what color is my son's diet? Yeah, and you should, and so should he. You know, we play a game. Well, when they were a bit younger, my kids are 9 and 7 now. I can't pull that many tricks anymore, but when they were a bit younger, we'd play this game where when you have your plate and dinner served or lunch is served, we play this game where how many colors can you collect in your plate of what's there, and the more colorful the plate, you know, the more likelihood you'll win. And that way
it's a trick even that you grow up with. It's a life skill kind of am I eating a good variety of different fruits and vegetables? Even when we make a fruit salad, for example, together, we say, okay, so it's not just apples and pears and bananas, things of the same color. Let's try and add color and put some kiwis or put some red grapes or put something that has a bit more color that would make it more exciting. But in reality, it's adding to the selection of nutrients that the food would give them. And right. I know with an only child, it's a bit tricky maybe because it's almost not a mother-child relationship. It's almost like a friend that you become with this kid that you have, and you have to sometimes put your foot down and say, no, this is why we're having a selection of fruits and vegetables. This is why we're having a salad at dinner today instead of letting you have what you want.
Oh no, I think he would love to be a friend, but I spend all of my time making sure that he knows, no,
yes,
this is what you need.
yeah. I don't know if you've tried it, but I let them choose in the supermarket as well. And when you go to the supermarket, and I'm always dragging my kids to the supermarket. They used to love it. For some reason, they don't like it anymore. But I say, why don't each of you choose something that you can take home and we can cook together, or we can add to the salad, and preferably something that you've never tried before, or something that you don't know the name of even. And it just makes it more exciting. Each one of them comes home with an exciting new vegetable or fruit, and I don't know, it makes it a bit more interesting. But every time I think I figured it out, something happens and everything goes out the window. So don't quote me on this.
I know, because now I'm thinking, so now what you've also left out of this equation is that you're like a really good cook. And see, myself, then I have to think about, if it gets a little too creative, how am I going to make it so it works? But that's similar. I can read a cookbook and I can follow a recipe, so I'm good.
No, you know what? I am not a somebody that enjoys being in the kitchen. I have to admit this. I am a working mother. And it's just hard, especially being in this part of the world with your social obligations and family and kids and work and all of that. There's not much time to be in the kitchen. And a lot of mothers assume that because I'm a nutritionist, I'm also a chef. And I'm not. I've had to learn how to cook, but I've also, I think, maybe gotten much better at the easy, quick recipes that would make my life easier. For example, let's say we have beans for lunch. When we have beans, it's not always that we cook the beans from scratch and soak them. Beans require soaking and they require a long time for cooking. And we don't always do that. So what I do is I just buy a big amount of beans and we pre-cook and freeze. So I would freeze them in individual amounts. So in like little sandwich bags or something where they are in one single serving size. And we have all these beans in the freezer. If you open my freezer, each drawer has a different kind of bean. And it's ready cooked. And what I do is when you're in a hurry, you grab one of the bags, you take the contents out and you just pour hot water over it. And you have an instant bowl of beans, whether you want to add that to soup or to your salad or to whatever. So I've kind of just trained myself at making the process a lot easier and a lot less complicated. Simplify it. This is what I tell my clients all the time. The simpler it is, the more likely you'll stick to it. So if the kids' dinner requires an hour, then the chances of you cooking a healthy dinner tomorrow is a lot slimmer. It's much easier to just go and get junk food somewhere.
Well, that's a very good point, and that's really true.
Yeah. Do you cook every night, or how do you?
Well, that's a broad statement.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I do, and I enjoy cooking if I know that my son will eat it. Now, the interesting thing is, and so I know that you're a vegetarian, and my son actually wants to be a vegetarian. He tells me all the time, he goes, Mommy, I'm not built to eat meat. He goes, I don't want to eat meat. And so I do actually cook meat very well. But, and it's interesting because I do think that I have my own controversial feelings about meat, so I'm not interested in pushing that on him. I do have friends who they knew at 5, 6, 7 years of age that they were not going to be meat eaters. And I think my son is one of them. So now, but that gives that added pressure of making sure that he's going to get all of his nutrients if I don't, because I'm not a vegetarian, and that is my major go-to for protein. So what would you suggest for a child who's not big on, well, vegetables aren't a protein? How can I make sure he's getting the protein that he needs? Because he's growing like a weed, and he's not underweight, but he's probably just below average, but he's like off the charts in his height.
Okay.
And so he's like in the 95th percentile for height and maybe 40th percentile for weight. I can't find any clothes to fit his hips, and nothing to fit his length at the same time. So I feel like he's not going to get malnourished as he's growing so rapidly, needing all the calcium and protein and that kind of thing. Suggestions?
Well, this is such a fantastic question. I think, well, first of all, I eat seafood, so I'm not completely vegetarian. And my kids, a lot of people wonder what my kids are and how, I tend not to inflict my own theories other than just basic healthy food. But, these are theories that depend on many different factors. So I let them choose what they want to be. But I try to make the food at home mostly animal-based, mainly for health reasons, because when you eat a lot of animal-based foods, then your blood becomes very acidic, whether you're vegetarian or not. I mean, some people who are not vegetarian would have animal products, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and sometimes even snack. And when you have a lot of animal-based foods, then you're making your body very acidic. It's as simple as that. And when you're very acidic, chances of getting sick or illness or even being angry are a lot more likely. So your ultimate goal is to be as alkaline as possible, which is the opposite of acidic. So in order to be alkaline, you need to go more towards plant-based diets. So salads and vegetables and even proteins, but from animal sources. For example, when you have quinoa is a grain. I don't know if you're familiar with the grain quinoa. It's a South American grain which has a lot of protein in it. So you can add that to the meal and not necessarily have the meat or chicken or anything and still have it be very high in protein. But also beans in general, for example, hummus is not only high in protein but also high in calcium and magnesium, which you need both for a growing child. But also, again, maybe examine why he wants to be vegetarian and why some people some kids have very strange theories, and they might pick them up from the playground. I mean, my kids sometimes come up with strange theories about, once she came and she thought ketchup was made of blood, and I think somebody was was joking in the playground, and at that age you don't know who's saying the truth, and she kept that. She never discussed why she didn't like ketchup, and she just held that theory until much later, until I discovered that this is what she thought, and you have to just clarify what's happening. So find out first why he wants to be vegetarian. And if he really does, then there's so many different sources. I mean, beans are a great source. Also, a very nice option for you is to sprout the beans. When you sprout beans, they really have enzymes.
You can sprout beans.
It's much easier to sprout than you think. Jelaine, it's a lot easier. I used to think that as well. But or you can get them sprouted. Just buy them sprouted. I'm sure you have all these fantastic health stores around you that can allow you to do that. But something like quinoa, for example, it sprouts just by you soaking it for a few hours. It's so easy to sprout. It's such a small grain, and it develops this tiny little tail at the end of it, and you can have it raw at that point with the salad. And when you sprout something, you really bring out the nutrients and the enzymes, because beans and nuts, for example, you can sprout nuts and seeds as well. And nuts are dry, and they're almost like in a dormant state, because they're supposed to be carried by birds and thrown in different parts so that they can grow in other parts. And it's only when they hit the ground and they hit water do they come to life. And is that a coffee that you're having? Because this is a health show. I hope it's not a coffee. Okay. Fine. But so the nuts, when they hit the ground and they start getting the water, that's when they come to life and they become alive, really. So when you sprout them, you're bringing them to life, and when you eat them alive, then they give you life.
How's
So
that?
yeah, that's much better. But now it's your turn to talk. So
well, it's interesting, and it's interesting going back to even the meat. So first of all, I mean, yes, I mean, you always, every time I talk to you, I appreciate talking to you because maybe it's like I won't be so scared of my kitchen, and so maybe I can actually go and experiment, and it's not a big deal if I fail the first time. But I appreciated you explaining that about sprouting because I always wondered why you always hear how sprouting is so good for you, but I never really knew why. So that was very nice. Thank you. But it was interesting, like, going back to the meat with Ethan. His reasons is he says he physically can't chew the meat, even if I give him tiny pieces. He said, Mommy, he goes, it just doesn't feel right for me to chew it. He doesn't mind the taste. It's just the chewing and the swallowing of it. And I have another friend from South Africa who did that, who she was like that when she was 5 years old, and she's never been able to touch meat. Now, he will do fish, so I'll just focus more on fish. And I like fish,
you can
too,
do that.
so.
But you know, it's fantastic to hear that he's even saying that, because most kids are very detached from how they feel about eating. For most kids, eating has become so routine and so monotonous that they don't even know how they feel about things anymore. And what I tell parents, or I mean, I teach adults that even, is how do you feel after a meal? And most people will say, oh, I don't know, nothing, I feel normal, you know. And you'd say, okay, no, let's go to your tummy and see how that feels. Let's go to your throat and see how that feels. Do you have a headache? Can you see properly? Are you tired? And most people can't verbalize that, or can't even make the connection between what they just ate and that. So I think him knowing what he doesn't like specifically about that certain food is already a very big step. For a lot of children, they've been told to finish their plate. You're told not to get up. I mean, we all have, especially our generation, we're told not to get up from the table until you've finished this X amount of food that you have on your plate. So inside your head, you've eaten, and then inside your head something says you're full, and then you have this parent figure standing on top of your head saying, no, you're not full. So you ignore this voice. So I have a hard time with adults teaching them to listen again to that voice, to say, what is that voice telling you when you just put down your fork? Did it just say that you're full? Because that's usually the body signal for that. And if it did, then let's go with that feeling and let's start listening to that voice again, because research has shown that up to the age of 3, children are completely adjusted to that voice. They're completely synchronized with that voice, and they know exactly what their body wants. So, you know, sometimes you're feeding a child and you have this one tiny little piece on the plate at the end of dinner, and they just won't have it. And they've had enough, and that's all they're having. And you get really annoyed, and you think, it's the last one, just eat it. Where in reality, they are a lot more in touch with what their body is telling them than you are. And we're supposed to be able to do that, where eating becomes less visual and more related to the senses, you know, where it doesn't matter if there's 1 piece or 10 pieces left. What do you feel about that? And I tell parents, I mean, unfortunately, parents still do that. They still tell their kids, don't leave the table until you've finished your plate. And what I suggest is that people just have let their child adjust to the food the way they need to adjust. And if they're full, they can get up from the table and honor that feeling of fullness, because it's a message that they will need later on in life, and they need to continuously listen to that.
Well, this is good. This is great. Let me ask you one other question.
Okay.
So I find that, like as I mentioned, my son will drink a lot of the green juices.
Okay.
Is juicing, I mean, are juice, how, you know, but I also know that, you know, that even the green juices have like apple juice mixed in or other fruit juices to make them taste sweet. Even though there's no added sugar, I know that the fruit has sugar. So what would be the pros and cons of juices as a nutritional source?
That's a very good question, because a lot of people think that a juice is a good thing because it's made of fruits, and in your case it's made of vegetables, which is fantastic. But juice is a lot of sugar. If you think of having a glass of orange juice, for example, think of how many oranges came with that. So there's a difference between a juice and a smoothie, and we have to make that distinction, because when you juice something, you're basically getting rid of all the fiber and all the hard stuff, and you're just being left with the water content and the sugar. the fructose mostly in the fruits. And that's a lot of sugar if you're not having any fiber with it. So I would rather the kid has the fruit itself rather than the juiced shot that you're left with, you know. So basically it's concentrated sugar that you're gulping in one go. And what it does is it raises blood sugar, and then the chances of his brain going all over the place, concentration goes down, possibly immunity goes down, behavior becomes erratic, and you don't know what he's jumping on the bed, and you're saying no, stop jumping on the bed, and whereas he has all this sugar that he needs to burn, and his body doesn't know what to do with it. So what I would recommend, whether it's a fruit juice or a green juice, I would recommend it's a green smoothie. So when you're having the greens, at least you're reducing the effect of too many fruits. You don't need to put as many fruits because you're putting, let's say, 1 apple, and then the rest is green leaves or cucumber or whatever. This is the juice that we have on a daily basis. It's a cucumber and apple, and then everything green and leafy that I can find in the fridge. So parsley, coriander, whatever it is in the fridge. So the greenness of the juice makes it a lot more alkaline, and it helps your body become more alkaline. But if I were to put more than 1 or 2 apples in that, then it would become a very sweet shot that your body gets with a sugar high at the same time, and you don't want to have that. You're much better off having that as a smoothie so that you get all the fiber at the same time. And you can throw exciting stuff in there. You can put cinnamon, which really works very well at balancing blood sugar, by the way. Cinnamon is fantastic for balancing blood sugar. And you'll also have all the fiber that comes naturally with the fruit, but you can also add seeds, for example, flax seeds or sunflower seeds, and the child won't even notice that. But you need a good quality blender for that, you know, so that it becomes smooth and exciting.
Yes, this whole healthy eating lifestyle, it requires many different kitchen products. Now you have to come up with a website that has every kitchen product that you need, and where we can. You have to do it for those of us who don't want to put any effort into it. So we need to know where we order it, how much, ship it to us, the very user-friendly instructions. What are our weekly shopping lists? What can we make? What's going to take less than 10 minutes? Okay, so you can have all this, right, very soon?
Yes, and I think you need me to spoon feed you as well after that. Yes. And come and show your kids. But you know, it's trial and error. Usually the first child gets the most trials. So at the moment, this is what you have, and you're doing all your trials and errors in that child. And I think you get better at it with time. You develop a stronger spine. I think with kids over time, you realize that you do have a say. And the earlier you start, the better. A lot of parents think that, you know, the media dictates what a 1-year-old should be eating or a 2-year-old should be eating, but there's nothing wrong with an 8-month-old having a green juice, you know, and you assume that they wouldn't want to, but you'd be surprised because the taste buds at that age are very clean. They haven't yet been contaminated with all the junk food and the stuff that kids eat today, and they are a lot more likely to accept healthy food. The younger you start, the better. So I mean, with teenagers it becomes a lot harder with teenagers.
Well, you know, I've always believed in the whole, what you were saying about like not forcing kids to overeat. And I've never done that with my son. And in fact, he's more of a grazer all day. We'll sit down for meals and he'll probably eat more of a smaller meal, and he prefers to have snacks. And I'm very lucky. I mean, he may not, our vegetables are a challenge, but he actually doesn't go for the sugar. You know, we still have a whole thing of Halloween candy that he barely touched, and we agreed to throw it all away the other day. He loves like granola bars as like a snack, like the Cliff. I don't know if you have the Cliff bars, but they're very, very healthy. It's just actually they're raw. A lot of it's raw, and so I'm lucky that way. And I do just let him graze. I have a whole thing on the counter of just very healthy snacks, and he can free feed himself. You know, whenever he wants, he knows that's his snack jar. Yeah. And I feel very comfortable with what's in there.
Yeah.
So. I do think that kids should have that kind of grazing mentality.
They should, definitely, yeah. I think you have to just be careful of the amount of sugar that he would be having. I mean, granola bars, as healthy as they are, I'm sure they're sweet in some. I mean, if it tastes sweet, then I'm sure there's some form of sweetener there. But because I was thinking of you just now of how to incorporate vegetables maybe a bit in the diet. You could ask him what textures he's into these days. So if he's into crunch, then create like a stir fry crunch effect. If he's into soft and mushy, then maybe even steam all the vegetables, blend them together and make patties out of them and just pan fry them like in a shallow pan. That way he has like a veggie burger kind of texture to that. But I think he's at the age where you can discuss,
yes,
how can I make it, how can we both work together so that you can have this and your brain will work better and your eyes will work better, etc., without it being a disgusting texture that you don't feel like having. And most kids are so not used to being asked that in the beginning they completely won't understand what their mother is up to, and they won't even understand the question maybe, but eventually they'll realize that, okay, I do have a say, and maybe I should pay attention to what it is I do like, so that I understand. Okay, so I was telling you about my daughter who's going through this phase of pre-teen, not really a child, not yet a teenager, and she knows she has a lot of tastes and preferences, of course, and she knows what she doesn't like, but somehow she's having difficulty verbalizing what it is about it that she doesn't like. And we're working on that at the moment, and we're saying, okay, there's a salad on the table, you're not interested in having that, or today you're not interested in having that. What is it about the salad? Do you need more oil in it? Is it too sour? Do you prefer to have different fruits and different vegetables in that salad, or different leaves? And I found that that is helping out a lot. It hasn't yet solved the problem, but it's not really a problem, but there is something in the food that's being offered that she's not happy with, and we have to have the ability to say, okay, I accept that you don't like it, but I also accept that you're not just stubborn for the sake of being stubborn, so let's have this discussion. And let's find out, if you were the mother, what would you do? If you were in my case, where I really care about you, and I want to see you eating more fruits and vegetables. I mean, the fruits are very easy. I'm talking more about the vegetables in the salad in reality. And what would you do if you were the mother? And you realize once they take on the mother's role, they start coming up with more creative ideas. Or maybe the pet, and I use the pet sometimes, although our pets passed away recently, but I say, if your pet only wanted junk food and like plain monotonous colored kind of food, what would you do, and what would you ask it if it could talk? And it's very creative what they come up with, because sometimes you don't even think of, sometimes they'll say something like, I think my pet wants to be left alone, and maybe it just needs a few days until it thinks again about the food that it's eating. And it's just fascinating. I mean, I'm sure you know from your own psychology background how kids' brains work, and it's always easier for them to speak when they're in somebody else's role. And when you say, if you were this pet's parent, what would you say to that, about that topic?
Although I've tried that with my son, who's like, Mommy, I'm going to be the nicest daddy ever. I'm never going to make my kids do anything that they don't want to do, as long as they're getting hurt. As long as they're not hurt, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah, I got that argument as well, and I brushed it completely. But you have to explain the side effects of eating unhealthy, and I'm sure you have. But
he does want to be healthy. I mean, I think the kids do. Like, he'll say, Mommy, is this healthy? And is this okay to eat? And he is conscious of that. So it is just about expanding the palate. And you've gotten me very, I'm very excited now to try and go see if I can sprout some beans.
Yeah, or sunflower seeds or whatever. But a lot of mothers watching this might be stuck with their kids being hooked on chocolates and sweets. And I think the trick to that is to make your own sweet treat before your child feels like having it somewhere else. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of healthy treats that you can make at home, so that they don't feel that the home is empty of the sweet desserts or the sweet treats, kind of. And yet, when they do have it, then it's not completely hazardous to their waist. For example, I make with the kids, you take the apples and you core them, you cut them in half and you core them on the inside. And inside that, I put some organic maple syrup mixed with walnuts. So you take the raw walnuts, you mix it with maple syrup, and you add a lot of cinnamon for taste. And you put that mixture inside the core, and you put the apples in the oven. And of course, apples and walnuts and cinnamon always make a fantastic smell in the kitchen, and it's always a delicious dessert. And it's completely harmless, and it's completely natural, and it doesn't have all the the additives and the preservatives and stuff that they put in chocolates. So parents think that it's a daunting, I have to be a chef, I don't know how to cook healthy kind of thing. Or they sometimes think that, oh, I cook with brown rice and brown flour, therefore it's healthy. It's not necessarily healthy when it has brown sugar, not brown rice, I meant brown sugar. It's still sugar at the end of the day, and it'll still cause a blood sugar imbalance. It'll still affect their behavior and their eyesight and all of that. So you want it to be as natural as possible. You want to have less of the flour and more of the nuts, maybe, to stabilize as a protein base, as a protein source. But also dates, for example, make a fantastic dessert option. You can even just roll them up and then roll them up into desiccated coconut or sesame seeds or whatever, and you can put the walnuts inside. You can be very creative like that without having to be unhealthy. And these even make very good lunchbox fillers, lunchbox items that they can have in school while they watch the rest of the kids having their biscuits and chocolates. We always have this thing where I say, do you ever look at your classmates' lunchboxes, and do you ever relate what they've just eaten to their behavior after recess? And it's funny that, of course, most kids don't, but it's funny how when you start relating your friend's behavior after what they've eaten, then you realize, that's what I don't want. I don't want to get into trouble after recess because I was naughty, because I couldn't help being naughty because of what I ate. You know what I mean? And of course, you have to cater that to age. It depends what age they are and how much they will understand. But just to be aware of their environment and to be aware of what others are doing because of what they've just eaten, or how they look even because of what they've eaten.
Well, and it's interesting because another approach, and this is maybe the psychology in me coming out, but what I've done with my son, and because he's not a sweet eater, I mean, he likes sweets, but it never dawns on him to just go and have chocolate. He likes the concept of it, but he actually, even if I offer it to him, he doesn't eat that much. And I've always done that. Like whenever I do take him shopping with me, if he asks to buy certain things, I try not to say no, actually, even though I end up being the one eating it, because I know that as long as I don't say no, then he doesn't covet it. He doesn't feel like he's missing something.
Yeah.
So we always have all this stuff in the house that I end up eating or throwing away, because he'll take one bite and then he's done, and he forgets about it, doesn't even care anymore. And so I think there's like that balance too of, you want to try and turn your kids on to what's right, and then at the same time not make it seem like something's missing from their lives, where they're going to try and sneak behind your back or really covet it so much that when they do have freedom with their own money later on or something, they go out and buy all this horrible stuff.
Yeah.
So there's that balance.
This is a fantastic point, Jelaine, because I'm always having this debate with friends or with clients about how do you strike a balance between being healthy and not having the unhealthy food at home, but still not having the child be completely deprived of the stuff that they'll want to have it for the rest of their life once you're not watching. And I'll give you myself as an example. I had no limits as a child. There was just no limits. And we could have as much ice cream as we wanted. We could have as much Pepsi as we wanted. And I had it as a child, but I still had my own restrictions, believe it or not. And I still was fairly healthy when I grew up. I had all kinds of health problems, but that's a whole different conversation. But I don't feel that, now that because I had it, therefore I'm used to having it, therefore I'll have it all the time. So I was the opposite, where I had it a lot and I'm no longer interested in it. But I also talk to adults today who have been deprived of it at home. And I use deprived between quotations because, at the end of the day, I don't know, it's for your best interest. But adults who never had it as kids, I have this conversation with them and I say, has that made you want to have it all the time as an adult? And most of them say no. So I'm beginning to wonder, the answer is, which is better? I don't know what's better. I haven't yet seen my kids grow old enough to see what they will decide to do with their own kids, for example, or what they'll decide to do in their own household. However, it seems that as an adult, you'll still make your own decision regardless of whether you were allowed that or not. But the kids who were not allowed that growing up kind of slightly have the upper hand here, because we tend to do what our parents did. And if our parents offered fizzy drinks in the house, then the chances are we will probably be okay with that as well. And just if you look at it from that perspective of you mirror what your mother did, or you start saying things that your mother said, then you might have the upper hand there if you've said no, because you're not just influencing Ethan, really, you're influencing his next generation as well, and the kids because he'll be implementing what you taught him in your house, he'll be doing that as well in his house. So I don't know what the answer to that.
Let me just offer one thing here, because I think there's a really big distinction too. So like, I know when I was growing up in my mom's house, it was kind of free range, whatever we wanted, and I really didn't want that much. But I left home when I was 13 to ride horses professionally, and I lived with my trainer and rode as a professional. And then all of a sudden, for the first time, I was being told about my weight. My weight had to be a certain way. It was deprivation. It was being told, don't eat that, don't eat this, don't. Not because it was unhealthy, but because you need to be a certain weight to look good on the horse. And so I found myself at 13 sneaking, into the cookie jar at night or whatever it was, and really having cravings for stuff. And I think that's where I've struggled with some of my own issues around food because of that period of time.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really big difference. And then maybe I've overcompensated a little bit with my son, but I just don't want to deprive him at all. So if he wants something, I'm not going to say no, but then we do talk about whether it's good for you or not. And then usually, like, he hates soda. He does not want anything to do with soda. He really does make good choices. He prefers water to a lot of other things. But what you're doing in your house, it doesn't sound like deprivation. You're making sure what the craving is, I want something sweet, and you're emphasizing you can have something sweet and it's going to be healthy, and let's look at it too. So you're not saying no. Yeah. You're saying, and it's okay, this is what we're really talking about here. We want something that's going to be really delicious and nurturing to our, to our souls. And so this is the form that we're going to do it. And I think that's different than someone saying, if you eat that, you're going to be fat, you're going to be ugly, you're not going to be able to do this. There's a big difference there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I want to touch up on something that you said, which I think is very interesting. You said you had the craving for the sweets. And recently I had a child who came in with his parents who was overweight. He was, again, just, I think he was about 11, and he had a craving for sweets, and that's why he wanted to have them. And although his parents, as much as they said, don't have it, it'll make you gain weight, he still wanted to have it. And what we had to do is we had to go back and figure out why he was having all these cravings. Because a sugar craving is a serious one. I mean, a sugar craving is something that will get you out of the house in the middle of the night, and you'll end up driving to the closest store and buy something if you don't have it in your fridge or in your cupboard. And so this is something serious where the brain is seriously having a sugar dip, and it needs to have something sweet right now. So we actually analyzed what was causing the child's cravings, and in most cases it was just erratic eating. So if the child would skip breakfast, for example, by the time he has lunch, he's starving. So he'll pig out at lunch. And if you've just pigged out because you were so hungry, chances are you'll also want to have dessert after that meal. And then dessert pulls dessert. And by the time he goes to bed, he's had so many erratic meals and so little protein in these meals, for example, or so little healthy food in those meals, that chances are he'll have the late night munchies, and he'll want to have that Mars bar or whatever in the middle of the night, whereas his parents would say, why are you having it? Don't you know this is not good for you? For a child that's having these serious cravings that are coming from the brain, really, a brain imbalance, a chemical imbalance in the brain, you can't really blame him for doing that. So what we would do instead is make sure that he's having 3 meals and 2 snacks, and all of these meals are balanced, and then say, fine, here you have 2 or 3 times a week, you're allowed dessert. Let's see if you want it as badly as you used to now that your brain chemicals are completely balanced. And chances are he won't really have a need for it, because he would have had his fruit salad, and he would have had his nuts, and he would have had a good breakfast and a good healthy snack in school, for example. And by the time he goes to bed, he will literally not have any need for anything else. And this is how you balance it out, you know?
And I know that myself from the, when I've done cleanses. I've always been amazed at after a cleanse, I don't have any cravings, and then I think, and then what do I do?
Yeah. And this is what we do as adults. And imagine a child would know even less on how to deal with it. And we're expecting a child, I had a mother call me once and said, my child, he's 9 years old, he's very much overweight. He keeps going to the kitchen cupboard and opening it up and eating everything in it. And I keep telling him not to. And I said, I'll speak to him, but I need to speak to you first. Because first of all, why is the kitchen cupboard full of stuff? And second of all, the adults don't know how to deal with these things. How is a child expected to know how to deal with that? So we have to really take a step back and assess why these things are happening. And it does make a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jelaine, thank you so much. I think we could talk about this all day, but you are amazing. And I think you brought out a few good subjects that I hope that a lot of mothers will benefit from. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure, and it was just great to see you from so far away.
I know. Same here. Same here. And to all of you watching, thank you for watching today. And I hope to have more of these casual conversations with Jelaine, and hopefully with other guests as well. And that's it from me. This is your host, Alia Almoayed. Thank you for watching.